I will get it right this time too. Hi, welcome back. We are at Kipaipai's Friday Happy Hour, and today we are going to see a presentation by Jill Sykes and Betty Ann Brown, of which Jill is one of the curators for this exhibition, and Betty has written the essay. I'm gonna give it over to them, and we're gonna go ahead and see this beautiful presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. All right, Jill, it's up to you.
Okay, so this is a project that has been in the works for several years now. Seems like about forever. And it was all triggered, obviously, by the 2016 election, and everybody goes into great shock. And the real bottom line is that Ada and I were literally looking for some sort of opportunity to do something and make a venue for ourselves to show our work. And just one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. And then the brand had a call. So we thought, let's do that. So it's, like I said, been in the works for a long time. And in fact, we went out to Andy. Thank you again, Andy. She gave us quite a bit of her time one afternoon. We just wanted to bounce some ideas off of her. And this is what we finally ended up with. And we have a little curator statement here, which I won't read the whole thing to you, but there were 3 quotes that really spoke to both of us. And one was, "You do not realize how the headlines that make daily history affect the muscles of the human body." That's Martha Graham, the dancer. And it's like, that's true. Another one was, "The arts are an even better barometer of what is happening in our world than the stock market or the debates in Congress." Henrik Willem von Loon. I don't know who he is, but that's a really good quote. And the third one was this one by Toni Morrison. "This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for despair. Pardon me? No place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal." And everybody we talked to on some level was addressing the crazy chaos that we were all facing. So we came up with this very diverse show. So let's go to the first slide.
Wait, how about telling us the title?
Go to the first slide and we can see the title.
Oh, okay.
It's called Let Me Talk. And this title came from one of the pieces that's in the show, and also came from a personal experience that I had talking to a man one day who got louder and louder and taller and taller and taller, trying to just drown me out and wouldn't let me speak. And I finally put my hand up and said, "You need to stop talking." And it was almost like I'd slapped him across the face. He really, literally recoiled. And about 2 weeks later, I saw this one painting, which you will see later on in the presentation, in an exhibition that Betty had curated, and it started a lot of wheels spinning for this. So, an exhibition addressing the suppression of voices in the deeply dark and coarsened public discourse of our current political climate. So our new date is January 15th, 2022, catalog essay by Betty Ann Brown, and it will be at the Brand Library and Art Center in Glendale. Hope you can come. Okay, next. So this is Margaret Alarcon, and she's a really interesting artist, and she focuses a lot on the negative spaces in the images and the cutout holes in the material she's using. She's speaking of institutional violence and trauma that literally cuts into our souls. This is a silkscreen on acrylic and oilcloth, and with the holes cut out, they're hung away from the walls, and you get the beautiful shadows. So you see on the left is the front of it, and on the right is the reverse side. You can see the skulls cut out, and she's very much speaking about her Mexican heritage and the family and just the history of the people here in Los Angeles. And there's another image. We have 2 of her pieces. So go to the next one. This one is about the Brown Berets of 1971. So she refers to it as old school. So she says, "These altars behave like kinetic mobiles, freely moving like enduring memories. How do we want to be remembered?" These are quite large pieces. They're really amazing and just hung from hangers. They're beautiful.
And just a couple of points about Margaret's work. The fabric she's using is oilcloth that is very typical in Mexican cafes and restaurants. And her technique is called papel picado,
Yes.
which is the Mexican form of cut paper ornamentation. I'm sure a lot of you have seen paper banners during the Day of the Dead, say, during Mexican celebrations of the Day of the Dead with cut paper images. So she's taking that traditional folk art and using it to talk about current political issues.
That's right. Thank you, Betty. Yes, that and silkscreen. Kitchen table oilcloth. That's exactly right. Okay, next. This is Dawn Arrowsmith, and Dawn Arrowsmith is a twin. And she says that she and her twin sister, although they're close, are politically perfect opposites of each other. And communication is a huge issue for the two of them because they're, like I say, very, very close. So her question is, how do we talk with each other, especially during these political times? And her sister is a Trumper and an evangelical Christian, and so they hit a lot of brick walls. But the relationship is important. So she's exploring this in terms of color and shape, and so she's using colors that are diametrically opposed to each other and watching them vibrate, and yet they still work together, opposing complementary colors. And so she's done a series of these paintings, and they're quite large, and they vibrate, and they work beautifully together. But she's talking about, how do you put these opposing ideas together? It's a challenge for someone like Dawn and her sister. So that's definitely what she's talking about. And she's thinking about it as a much more global issue as well. I mean, how do you talk to your next door neighbor? So there's that. Next. This is Ada's work. And these pieces started off from an encounter that she had in an airport in Paris, where a woman wearing a traditional head covering all the way down to her toes pinched her arm and like shook her finger at her because Ada was very hot. She was apparently wearing a sleeveless shirt. And so they had this little eye contact, but they didn't speak the same language. You know, you should be dressed, you should be covered. And Ada's going, but it's so hot, how can you do that? You know, meaning the clothes. So they just had this lovely encounter, and they kind of both laughed and shrugged their shoulders and went on their way. But it started something for Ada, and she started researching women who wear veils, women who are covered, and she's got the bride who looks so frightened there, and the nun, and she's done several more of these, and they're quite beautiful with the gold metallic background. They're lovely, and it's talking about women. And then there's another slide. Next. These, she's talking about migrants, and she's talking about displaced populations in the world, and political oppression, and climate change, and earthquakes. How we respond is a reflection of our humanity. And there's another sculptural piece that'll be further on in the show that you'll run into in a bit, that will be next to these paintings of Ada's, with the fences and the gates and people running, and the positioning is going to be quite beautiful, I think. So these are 48 by 48 inch each. I think she did these just last year. So that's Ada. Next. This is Lavielle Campbell. She's a quilter, and this is a series of twin bed-size quilts that represent words, quote, out of the mouths of babes. This particular quilt came from an incident of a 4-year-old girl who witnessed her father getting shot by police while sitting in the front passenger seat of the family car. Her mother's behind the wheel, screaming at the police, and the 4-year-old's in the back seat. And this is apparently what she said: "Mom, please don't keep cussing and screaming, because I don't want you to get shooted." She's 4 years old, and her father was killed by the cops right in front of her eyes. So she has another piece in the works for her that she hasn't finished yet, or at least I haven't seen, but this is big, it's beautiful, it's incredibly moving piece. Next. This is Eileen Cowan, and this piece is mostly about, I think, homelessness and what people end up, how they end up surviving and how difficult it is. And she calls this piece, well, first of all, she says that she reads the New York Times every day and she's always up on the news. After the 2016 election, for the first time, I was paralyzed. That's her quote. So this piece is called A Sudden Sense of Dislocation. It's about hiding and fear and separation, and most of all, uncertainty, unseen events and the uncertain future. And the image on this that really gets me is that kid walking down there on his way to school with his backpack. And where are these people and how heartbreaking this is. And it's happening all over. It's happening right on Moulton, 20 feet from my studio as we speak.
I want to jump in here quickly about this piece. Eileen is going to be one of our featured artists during our LACMA show in January at MOA for the Golden Hour. And we will actually be showing this film in her space during that exhibit that will open at MOA in January. So if you want to see the actual film, you can see the film at MOA in January.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was somebody at my door. I had to wave them away. Okay, yeah, so that's Eileen. She's got fantastic work. Okay, next. This is the piece. This is the piece that kind of got my brain going. This is B.B. Davidson. And this is a series of, as far as I know, 3 pieces of her feminist protest series. So after this encounter that I had here in my studio with a guy who was renting space from me, it was so unpleasant, I can't even tell you. And like 2 weeks later, Betty had that show at Ground Space, and you had these pieces of BB's. This is a really, really powerful piece. And I don't know, Betty, you know more about this work than I do. You want to have anything to say?
Well, those of you who know Bibi know that a lot of her work, a lot of the figures in her work are avatars. They often resemble her in the way a cartoon can resemble an actual person. She has bright red hair, and her figures often have reddish hair as well. And she likes to incorporate things into the surface of her paintings, like that ear and the Scrabble letters and the lenses that curl up out of her mouth towards the shut the fuck up. And I think she's an incredibly gifted painter, and her content is often really, really powerful, like this one is.
Yeah, this is sort of a linchpin for me, this piece, for the whole show. And it's not that large, it's 24 by 24, but it's an amazing piece. So thank you, BB. Okay. This is Bianca Dorso, and these 2 pieces pretty much speak for themselves. This is a 12-year-old with a gun, falling asleep peacefully. He looks like an angel, and he's holding a gun. And it's a very disturbing piece. And yet he looks like an angel. And then the second piece, go to the next one. Did this girl get hit in the face? Did she have a sports injury? What happened here? So the title is Say Something, Say Something. So she's speaking about domestic violence and sports and violence in the streets. And they're children. These are just children. And I just find these really, really beautiful, powerful photographs. This one in particular, I mean, anyway, we have to take care of our kids. Next. This is Margaret Griffith. This is the piece I was talking about that we're going to put next to Ada's triptych of the migrants with the fences. This piece is huge. It's 9 feet by 30 feet and is cut out, hand-cut paper of a fence. And Margaret takes images of fencing and she cuts them out, either sometimes laser if it's metal, or hand cuts it out of paper, and she drapes it and folds it and bends it, and they become these beautiful, beautiful sculptural things. But they have a lot of other content to them. They speak about neighborhoods and separations and boundaries and barriers and security and peace. And fear and isolation. This next piece, go to the next slide. This is the White House gates. Margaret won the very first David Whaley grant in 2017, and this is the work that she did with that money. And she went there right after the inauguration of Trump. So these are photographs of the White House gates and the east and west gates of the White House. And she's talking about the decadence of an institution in crisis, which we were instantly in crisis with this election. And so the veneer of glamour gives way to gravity and the sagging ornamental curlicue of this beautiful fancy gate. So she finished this giant piece, and it was instantly shown down in a gallery in, I believe, Houston. So the fact that it was in Texas, I've always found very meaningful. So this is going to be hung in the gallery space, if you're familiar with the space at all, across some windows, just looping and sagging this sort of limp, sagging gold. It's a really stunning, powerful piece. And it's gigantic. Next. This is Laura Larson. And she's done a series of these creatures that were originally based on the mourners. The mourners' tomb sculpture from the court of Burgundy. They were alabaster sculptures in a procession on a tomb. And a lot of us saw them when they were here at LACMA many years ago. So she started these miniaturized versions, but she put animal heads on top of the human bodies. So the bodies are these mourning cloaks with the animal heads in a hope to inspire empathy for the plight of all animals in peril of extinction while acknowledging our own human condition. So go to the next slide. So you can see they're really quite small. They're about 7 inches, but they're all cast in bronze, and it's a continuing series. I mean, she has several new pieces since the last time I spoke with her pre-COVID. And they're intricate and beautiful and very moving. And this whole exhibition was at MOA a couple of years ago. But like I say, she's been building on it and building on it. And she and her husband, Dean, have created a bunch of photo-based montages, which is the next slide. So Dean takes these photographs and he digitally manipulates them. And then he takes these figures of famous figures, and then he's been incorporating digitally Laura's sculptures. So the heads on these gold pieces are from her sculptures. And so he's incorporated and made these whole little worlds. They call them Once Upon a Time When Form Was Fluid, exploring the imagined life of animal hybrid creatures in their own fully developed world. So they're creating some surreal dreams with these creatures. So we'll have 4 of these. Go to the next slide. So you can see how they'll be hung on the poles with the rope. So that's Dean and Laura Larson. It's an ongoing project, so be really interested to see the next images she comes up with.
And aren't a lot of the animals she uses endangered?
Yes, that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
And just also bringing some of the character from these animals into these quasi-human forms. And this one in the middle is like a Medusa figure. And I know there's a story behind it, which is out of my head at the moment because it's not in my notes. But this is a more recent figure, and is the one sort of gendered figure that she has too. Is a woman holding these snakes. Anyway, she's having a really good time with them. Okay, next. This is Cynthia Manette. She had these birds were actually at MOA a few years ago, and her whole deal here is talking about migration and the environment and the border and all of that. And so she went down to the Rio Grande. These are spoonbill, roseate spoonbills, which are an aquatic bird, become a poster child for threatened species in the Gulf of Mexico. So she takes this plastic and she cuts it up and repurposes it, and she makes these beautiful sculptures, and they've been lit within But one of the issues with this particular bird is it flies through exactly the same area where migrants are coming across the border. And the migrants leave a lot of trash, just because there's a lot of people and there's trash and there's water bottles and earbuds from their computers and all this stuff, and the birds get caught up in it, and it's just this cycle. And so you can see that the birds have trash on them. They're not just beautiful birds, they're like trapped with this detritus that people have left. Go to the next slide, Betty. So see the bottles. This is actual stuff that she found off the near the river. So she completed these birds, and these were also exhibited in a museum in Texas. I don't have the name, but this is an ongoing series. She's working on some more animals now as we speak, and there will be a drawing as well. There's the drawing. So I've donated a lot of empty kitty litter boxes to this enterprise. She does fantastic work. Okay, next. This is my friend Sierra Pashore, and she's a really fascinating sculptor. She works in clay, but these are porcelain, and she's done a series of work that she refers to as pump, which literally means heart. She does all these different hearts, but this is a sub-series of that, and she calls these the ghost hearts, representing the ever so necessary engines in life, the horrors and the heartlessness of too many conflicts to recount. These guys are fairly large. They're wall mounted. We will have 4 of them. Go to the next one. This is humanity heart. This is the elephant heart. And the next one, this is the whale heart. The ghost hearts are a grieving. They are both testament and warning. They tell the story of a loss that is fast approaching. They weep and we weep with them. It's a really amazing, beautiful sculptures. So I've got 3 pictures. We will have 4 in the exhibition. Okay, next. This is Serena Potter. She's an amazing painter. She teaches down in Laguna. And this is a self-portrait. A lot of her work is self-portraiture. She says her work is largely personal, drawing on her own experiences and challenges. I will tell you the story she told me about this piece is that she literally tied herself up in this extension cord and got lifted up and had to hang there while somebody took, a series of photographs for her. She said it was really painful. But it was also a study in a lot of our work, we're trying to figure out how to work in a certain medium, or does this technique work? And so this was an academic piece and yet deeply personal. Go to the next slide. Betty? There you go. Just let it sit there for a second. Yeah. Okay, next. This is Umar Rashid. I don't know if you all know him. He's a really fascinating man and a really good egg. He has created a series of fantasy histories. They're all based on basic actual American history, 18th century. He mixes global players, African, European, and indigenous people, and he creates these worlds that are sort of almost real, but not quite. And this is a painting of a man proposing to this beautiful woman. She's just standing there. She just looks so dignified, and he's asking for her hand. You and me, baby, and nothing else. And one of the things I find so touching about this is that he's barefoot. I just find it beautiful. So Rashid creates alternate narratives that intersect the present and forecast new futures. So this is Umar. Next. Oh, Catherine, I think you should turn on your mic. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, Catherine, do you mind talking about your own work?
No, that's fine. This particular body of work, series of works, is one of the witness trees that I'm working on. And a witness tree in this case is a tree that is long-lived, still living, and has witnessed or either been appropriated by or certainly standing by a traumatic human event. And in this case, this tree is still thriving and beautiful, and it's living in Orange County near Irvine. And this tree is titled General Pico because General Pico used this particular tree for what are called extrajudicial hangings. And so unfortunately, a tree just being a tree becomes co-opted into a rather diabolical circumstance. And so these trees live on, and they're just beautiful trees, but there is this history that lives within them.
We've got some more slides, Catherine.
This tree is being built, so
It's growing.
it has become rather large. And so it's about 120 inches long, actually a little longer now than it was a week ago. And then all of the branches reach out and tend to kind of circulate across the wall, reminiscent of how these trees live on after, you know, this event. And in other words, the tree is bigger than the human beings who used it.
We did have the third image. I put the third image you sent the other day into this, but Betty doesn't have that final version of it because
No problem.
Anyway,
This gives an idea.
it's pretty stunning. It
Grows
stunning.
by the day. It's one of those projects that just keeps migrating into something that's bigger than I ever anticipated. But
Well, I'm so glad we were able to give you extra time to finish it too.
well, that's the thing. It's like, gee, if I have all this time, I'll just do this and I'll just do that. And so I've done. So it's way past what we're looking at here, which is strung out on my kitchen floor.
And the living room and the dining room.
There's no step
Wow.
on it.
Yeah, it's taken over.
It's quite beautiful. It's really stunning. One day we'll get to see it.
One day.
One day. Okay.
Thank you, Catherine.
You betcha.
So this is Shizu Saldamando, and she's a really interesting woman. She paints a lot of people in her neighborhood that are mostly off the beaten track, so to speak. They're very unusual people. These are the most normal people I've seen her paint. And this is a mother and daughter. And this woman, if you look very closely, you can see she's got very heavily tattooed under her blouse, and she's got earplugs and the nose thing. And she's a high school teacher. She's apparently this very lovely woman. And the next photograph is her daughter. And so Shizu is just focusing on the people that are important to her in her life. And she knows this family really well. She works with the dad, and she just draws these people that are not your normal people. Normal. That doesn't sound right, but you follow what I mean. I hope you follow what I mean. I depict those who are my friends and who I hang out with, not as a survey of generations, but as a personal slice of life. Hers. Okay, next. This is Lee Salgado, and she's another one that cuts out by hand paper pieces, and these are quite lovely. They're life-size, so imagine how big a nightie would be, and they hang from these beautiful hooks. And one of the interesting things about Lee is her color. She used to be an art therapist, and she worked with, like, you know, gang kids. And the girls were always telling her that they hated the color pink because it connoted weakness and girliness and femininity in a way that was not respected and was powerless. And so they were, you know, really trying very hard to be tough. And so Lee has kind of tried to reclaim the color and return it as one of powerful femininity, not girly weakness. And these works are, I find them very powerful and very feminine, and it honors all of that in a way that these young women were trying to kind of get back to after these really tough lives that they'd had. And so she says the process is reminiscent of women's works, such as sewing, knitting, crocheting. The end result is most definitely fine art, historically privileged as men's work. So she's talking about the inherent power of femaleness rather than the associations of weakness, i.e. pink. There's another slide of Lee's work. This does not connote the underwear like the other ones did, but it's a big, beautiful pink piece. And it's very intricate with all these different layers and the little beading and the studs, and it's a big, beautiful piece. Okay, next. This is a suite of work from Self-Help Graphics called Utopia Dystopia, and it is 52 individual works. They made a complete deck of cards. So each artist was given a random card out of a 52 deck of cards, and they were to make a riff off of one card as utopia and the other card as dystopia, and it got all put together as a final deck. And so we have 26 framed pieces, with each artist has both cards in one frame. And this was curated by one of the other artists in our show, Mio Stevens Gandara. And it's a series of serigraphs, etchings, linocuts, and woodblock prints. And we have a few samples here.
Yeah, but before we get to them, I just want to point out to everybody that we are aware that there's a typo here. We are aware that dystopia is spelled D-Y-S. You see it down in the text below the image. So it was just a typo. It happens to everybody.
It's correct.
And I didn't think I was showing this version of PowerPoint, but I am. And so I got to tell you, we know there's a typo. So go ahead.
How dystopian that is.
Oh, spelling counts. Okay.
Spelling counts. All
Spelling
right.
counts. Okay, so let's go to the first slide we have for this group. So this is Mio's work, and she's very much an environmental artist on a lot of levels. And you can see on the left is a beautiful forest, and the border is surrounded by bees and flowers and more bees and branches and butterflies, and it's lovely and it's full of life and it's beautiful. So that's her utopia. The card on the right is dystopia after the fire. And it's pretty plain, but you can also see barbed wire and pills and drugs and guns. So this is the kind of thing that people are talking about with this series. I think this is a silkscreen, but I'm not sure. Okay, go to the next one. This is Ada's piece. Ada Pullini Brown has work in this series as well. And the one on the left is her dystopia. And she says in Latin, silentium non custodiat, which means silence will not protect you. And that's supposed to be a man's hand trying to silence the queen. Silence will not protect you. On the right, we have Utopia, a little girl playing with a balloon. Okay, next. This one nails me. Obviously, on the left, you have Utopia, so a lovely young mother reaching out for her baby's hand, and the next one, she's being taken away by the Border Patrol. This one makes me want to cry every time I look at it. Okay, next. This one lists just the early signs of democracy and fascism. It's very black and white and red. And you just read it, you know, acts for common good, no common good, reflects nationalism, only one nation, back and forth and back and forth. So these are the ideas that people are talking about here with these cards. Okay, next. This is the whole deck. You can get a whole deck of these cards, and they come in a box, all 52. So we're going to have these laid out in a glass box on a big plinth underneath this wall that will have all these frame pieces hung together in a grid. I've seen these pieces in a much bigger space, but I think hung together, they're going to be really powerful. Okay, next. This is Barbara T. Smith. And Barbara T. Smith is an early feminist artist here in Los Angeles. And she does a lot of work using her own body as an image. And she's reflecting on her own aging, and the powerful presentation of her aging hands in these works are building upon her larger investigation into enduring strength and fragile nature of identity and humanity. We have 4 of these, and go to the next slide. And what she's done is she's taking some older pictures, and she has her current aged hands superimposed over some of these older pictures, and they're showing the age, and they're showing her wrinkled skin and the gnarls on her fingers, and I find them very powerful and very touching. Go to the next. I think that's her back. I think she just took a photograph of her back with her hands pressed with the old rose all broken apart. Next. And that's a photograph of her face when she was much younger, and she's put her current age hands over the face. And again, you can see the skin and the knuckles. Next. This is Mio Stevens Gandara. This is the same woman that curated the self-help graphics show, the cards. So Mio is a Japanese-American woman, and she grew up here in Los Angeles. And this piece she calls Little Tokyo Norin. And a Norin is a Japanese doorway hanging 1, 2, 3 panels. And is hand-dyed, an indigo dye, and she's got a lot of stitchery and some silk screening in there. And it's showing Little Tokyo, and a lot of us are familiar with this, including I think that was a church. That building is still here in Little Tokyo. On the upper left, you see people getting into a bus. This is when they're all being shipped off to internment camps. They were wiping out the whole town. On the lower right, you see a woman walking, holding hands with a little girl. And that's Mio's mother and her grandmother. So this was her family's life, getting ripped out and shipped off to the internment camps because they were Japanese. Go to the next slide. So this is a detail shot of people getting loaded up onto buses. Now, this is a really personal piece for her. That's her family getting on that bus. Okay, next. This is a different kind of piece for Mio. This one, she's talking about the environment. And she's talking about the transformation of California land by how people have used it over the time. And if you go to the center of the piece, she's showing plants and seeds and trees and flowers that are indigenous to the California, to where we are. And as you circle around and circle around, she's bringing in more and more and more plants that have nothing to do with our native indigenous species here, including palm trees, and I guess oranges, and just how all these plants interact with each other and how they've changed the entire environment of California. And that this stuff does have impact. You can't just bring stuff in, but this is where we are. It's a really beautiful, beautiful piece. So it's round. She's framing it 40 by 40 inches. So that's Mio. This is Theodore Svenningsson. And Theo uses a lot of words. He paints beautiful trains, he paints buildings, he also does a lot of word work. And his work is very much focused on an interrelationship between individual persons and a larger group. It aims to investigate the difficulties and inabilities of certain individuals to fit in. This is very personal work for Theo. And this is actually an incredible piece. The communication used to be significant and really mean something. And it's against a bunch of letters. But physically, the red letters are painted on the inside of the glass, and there's a space between the glass and those old envelopes. So you get it lit and you get a beautiful shadow as well. This is a really stunning piece. Next. And this is a true story. Apparently, Theo grew up with a little girl named Hanja Beck, and Theo takes a very dark view of life. And he's just talking about a little girl who doesn't have much awareness, and everybody thought that she was crazy and her family was crazy. And at the end, if you read the whole thing, it's quite moving, but at the end says that she didn't think about what she someday would do. No one then thought of such things. She just drifted with the days, sometimes being happy. She didn't know that she would never amount to anything. No one would ever let her amount to anything, but she didn't know. Next. And this one we wanted specifically because of Trump. It's all about money. He was totally involved with money. He always judged people by how much money they had. He viewed himself as great because he had lots of money. He had tons and tons of money, but he was still temporary. He died. And I think we're watching that right now. I hope we're watching that right now. So this is Theo. Okay, next. Oh,
Who's this artist?
This is mine. So this piece actually came about again after the election and all that, and we're all talking about the vote is so important, and somewhere it finally hit my brain that the women didn't get the right to vote until 1920, which was tremendous. It was so many years of women marching and fighting and being thrown into jail and starved and force-fed and all this horrible stuff. 1920, and one day it finally hit me. My mother was born in 1918. And something about the thought that this girl child was born into a world where she had no say, she had no voice. And neither did her mother, and neither did anything. And it just suddenly really hit me. So I started doing this study on the suffragettes. So in a nutshell, I came up with 12, and each one of these panels represents a woman who marched and fought and ended up in jail, and all the horrible things that happened to these women. The one on the upper left is Margaret Sanger, who brought us Planned Parenthood and birth control. The one next to her is Emma Goldman, who also ended up in jail, and she got deported back to Russia. Anyway, each of these flowers is from the home state or nation, in Emma Goldman's case, of where this woman came from. And they're all white because these women marched wearing white. So that's my symbolism. Go to the next slide. So these are 4 of them. And it was a really interesting, diverse group, and finding all these flowers was a lot of homework. Anyway, so there's that. So go to the next one. This is my justice piece, and I painted this in March. And this is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is her dissent collar. And she died, and it's very sad. Anyway, that's Ruth. That's my Ruth. Next. Okay. This is J. Michael Walker's work, and he has family in Mexico, and he does a lot of painting of these people. They're his extended family. It's a suite of large paintings on paper to celebrate the elders in his adopted village in northern Mexico. And he talks about the innate sweetness and kindness that I seek to illuminate and celebrate in each glorious wrinkle. So we have 3 of these, and they're quite luminous and wonderful. And he's talking about the wisdom of these elders. Go to the next one. Sad-eyed lady. Go to the next one. This is very heartfelt work.
And I think it should be said that the village is where his wife is from.
Right. Right.
He went to the village first on a grant and met this woman that he married and had a child with, with whom he still lives.
Yeah, that's like 45 years ago. He's from Arkansas. And that move down to Mexico was not only an escape from Arkansas and family and whatever was going on down there, but it gave him a whole life. So this is his family. These are his people. And he's really interesting guy. Anyway, next. This is Cathy Weiss. Cathy Weiss has also shown at MOA a few times. This is a very large piece. It's the same woodblock print on both of these cork surfaces, and she's put them together. And the crown on the blue woman is actually symbolizes a stork's nest. They say storks. The women have been wearing headdresses since the beginning of time, and the stork nest is considered a mother symbol, and it's very powerful. So she's talking about two different women. Miriam's story and her connection to water is all very biblical, and I don't have it all as underlined as I wanted it to be, but she's talking about Miriam and Muhammad's daughter. They're both telling the same story, one from the Arab side and one from the Jewish side, and it is literally the same story. And on the chest of each of them is the mark, the hand of Fatima, and it's the same story for both cultures. So that's Cathy Weiss. Next. This is our last artist. This is Nancy Udelman. She does amazing work.
Yodelman.
What's that?
Yodelman.
Yodelman, did I mispronounce it?
Yeah, it's not Udelman, it's Yodelman.
Yodelman. Well, you can help me with this, because when I asked her to talk about the work, what she told me was literally, I buy dresses from thrift stores and I put stuff on it. But
that is literally what she does.
It is, no, that's fine, but I just wanted to know, like, what does she do? But let's look at some of these images, because I think this one looks like it's made of iron. It's so heavy and strong, and yet
she does actually cast some of them in metal, in bronze.
But this one just says mixed media relief sculpture, but it might be bronze.
Yeah, it might be one of the bronze ones that she casts. So she does these accretions of vintage jewelry and buttons and so forth on female identified clothing.
Right.
And it is an exploration of female identity and, you know, what we're told is beautiful, and how we wear these masks that extend over our whole bodies to present ourselves according to the standards of beauty and desire.
It also talks about, pardon me, being sort of imprisoned by these idealistic figures. Because in reality, that is no longer the sexy velvet dress. It's a work of armor. It is a piece of armor. And
yeah.
There you go. There you go. It's a brassiere full of straight pins, which just chills me every time I see it, but it's so stunning. Go to the next one. A beautiful glove full of straight pins. It talks a lot about what we go through to be beautiful. Go to the next one.
Wait, just to remind you, if this is looking familiar, it is definitely in the tradition of Mary Oppenheim, the female surrealist who is best known for the fur-lined teacup, but she also did things with female attire and tweaking them in a very surrealist way to make something, you know, lovely and desirable, creepy and threatening, which this certainly is.
Thank you. Thank you. This is exactly the information I was hoping you could provide. Go to the next one.
So she does all of this herself. It's not like she's not Anselm Kiefer with a whole army making her art for her. She makes it all herself. So you can imagine there's a little OCD going on here. She's a kind and generous person, and I love working with her.
She's lovely.
And
She's
her
terrific.
work, and she's done performance pieces, as well as the static work. She's superstar.
Yep. Yep. Go to the next. I think we have 2 more slides, or at least one. Maybe this is the last one. She's given us an entire outfit, and we're thrilled to death at Nancy and her outfit. So these are shoes. She's starting to put tools and cooking utensils into some of these sculptures as well. As you can see them, they've been wrapped around, and she's got encaustic and thread and jewels, and that looks like an ice pick. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but.
Well, that's a wrench on the left for sure.
Far left, it's got a couple of wrenches, but what's the wooden handle, I wonder?
I bet you that is a nice pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, beautiful and sexy and really threatening.
It's called an awl.
What's that?
Called an awl.
That's an awl? Okay. Oh, that's the poke a hole, right? So that is our exhibition.
So should I stop the screen share? Does anybody want to see anything again?
Anybody?
Okay, I'm going to stop the screen share and we can talk for a minute.
Okay. Oh, good. I haven't seen that. Thank you.
So, Jill, do you see all the comments in the chat?
I do now. Yeah. How nice. Thank you, everybody.
People have been real positive and appreciative. You have assembled an amazing group of artists.
Thank
You
you.
really have.
It's been really fun. It's a lot of work. It's really fun.
Yeah, well, curating always is, as I'm sure Andy could tell us too. Of course, Andy has a staff, and you don't have a staff.
Hey, that's not fair.
I had Ada.
I do have a staff,
Yeah.
but I do have to do the work of choosing and thinking and discussing and
Oh, of course you do, Andy. I didn't mean that critical.
She was tweaking you, Andy.
But Jill is hanging out there by herself with no institutional support.
no, I think it's a fantastic show. I was impressed with every single piece, and I can't wait to see this show. I hope that the brand knows how lucky they are to have this.
I hope so. I have no idea, but they've been really, really very supportive of the show. And when we first presented the show, it turns out like half the artists that we had brought in for our preliminary proposal couldn't be in the show because they'd already been in. They can only show an artist like once every 3 years or something. So this guy had already been in a show a year. So none of that would hold true today, but so we lost like half our artists from the day one, but she was on board with us from the get-go. She was really, really great.
It's a great exhibit. I think the work is stunning and it's just beautifully crafted and put together. So bravo, good job.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. The artists have been really great to work with. So thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do. I'm just, as I was, and I know, you know, the hoops you've had to jump through, Jill, to put this show together, but I'm wondering, now that you've done it, you're an artist and you stepped into the circle of trying to curate a show and do all the stuff that's required, would you do it again?
Not tomorrow. Yeah, I would. But I think, you know, Ada and I were kind of flying by the seat of our pants a lot, which is one reason why, Andy, we came to run it by you just to pick your brain. And you were incredibly generous. And then we brought in dear Betty, who was also incredibly generous. And we just thought, well, let's just keep doing this. And gee, have you heard of so-and-so? Let's go talk to that person. Let's go talk to this person. And it just became, that was just our summer job. That's just what we did. What are you doing Thursday? Let's go out and see Shizu. It was really interesting, but this is a very large show. I think it might be easier with just 2 or 3 people. You know, we've got a lot of people on the show.
So hopefully everyone doesn't use this as their a basis for their next presentation. This was unusual because this was an actual show that you've curated and we wanted to be able to see all of the work. But moving forward, I think as our Kipaipai artists are going to do presentations on Fridays, let's try to keep it to 5 artists or less. And the idea is to present your own work in the context of others' work, whether that's thematically, historically, and it doesn't have to be living artists that you're presenting. So how you want your work to be perceived and in what context you would like to see your work perceived, I think is kind of what we're getting at here for moving forward. But tonight was such a very special presentation. And I mean, I just feel like we really had a gem tonight. This is so unusual and so visually stunning and beautiful. And I loved all the comments about each one of the pieces. And I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as I did.
That is so generous, Andy. Thank you so much for saying that.
Thanks for letting me show the whole thing too. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I think we wouldn't have done you a fair enough service if we had abbreviated it at all.
Yeah.
You really need to see the whole thing, and it's in its entirety and not just a couple of selections. But I think for everyone else, as they move forward with these presentations, I think that they should keep it to about 5 or less artists. Just for their own sake, because
their sanity.
Yeah. We start off with the seed of an idea that grew and grew and grew and grew, but there's a definite thread, I think, that runs through it all. Yeah. So I think it holds together really, really well.
I agree. I think it does. And not just holds together, there is a thread between every single piece that ties together. Even if you didn't explain to us your kind of thesis behind the show, it's very obvious through the visual presentation what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
So great job.
Yeah.
Really great job.
Thank you.
Jill, is this your first curatorial project?
For something this large, yeah. I mean, I used to curate shows here at the brewery all the time, but that's quite a different ball of wax. So yeah. So
well, that's why I kind of wanted for you to present it, since we're now going to ask the Kipaipai artists to imagine an exhibition with their work in context that places their work in the context they want to be seen in.
Right.
That's precisely what you and Ada always said to me, that you wanted to surround your art with work that you valued.
absolutely.
And so that's what Andy has charged the Kipaipai artists with doing, is presenting their art in a context, and that's precisely what you guys did. So I really do appreciate you taking the time, and I know it is technologically traumatic to do this.
It wouldn't have been if I could have loaded it up, but
Jill, there are always problems with Zoom.
Yeah.
Do you know there's a new psychological phenomenon called Zoom fatigue?
yes, I've heard of it. Yeah.
I have it.
And there she's
I got it.
It's so
Yeah.
crazy. Well,
But
if it's not
again, one of the reasons we took this on was because we were trying to create an opportunity for ourselves to show, because finding those white walls, finding those rooms is very, very difficult. And so let's just put on a show, and it kind of got way bigger than we originally had in mind.
And this is what we've been talking about in all of the workshops too, is building your own opportunities from the resources that you have around you. And you, Jill, have a lot of resources because you happen to live at the brewery, you work at the brewery, you are surrounded by other brewery artists, you also have all of your Kipaipai family. And I think, and of course, you've been around a long time in the art world, so you have a lot of artists to work with that trust you and respect you. And that's kind of been our point. Betty and I have been saying this to all of our Kipaipai artists, is look around you and look at your own network and see what resources that you have, because each one of you is a resource to each other. And this is a perfect example of that. Make your opportunity, right? You didn't have a show, you weren't having a show, and all of a sudden you were like, well, I'm going to curate this show myself and I'm going to put it together. And if it's done well, like it obviously is, it gets to go to a place like the Brand Library and Gallery, which is a stunning exhibition space.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Yeah, I think everyone that's here tonight that's participating is definitely capable of putting something together. And again, I would be there for any one of you that you have questions. Jill said she wanted to talk about, this was 2 years ago.
Oh,
Um,
longer ago than
was
that.
it
Yeah.
longer than that? Okay.
Yeah.
Man, time goes by. But you know, we sat for a good hour and discussed not the details of the artwork, but we talked about how to put this together and take it somewhere.
Right.
And it worked for you guys. And
Yeah,
I'm
and
so
you had 10 minutes and you gave us over an hour. You literally said, "You're late. I've got 10 minutes maybe." And you sat with us for over an hour. You were so gracious. So
it was a
thank
great conversation, and you know,
we had fun.
you don't cut those short. And I think this is a good example for everyone else that's here tonight on how to make opportunities for themselves.
Yes.
And I think the key word is opportunities. And I remember talking to Jill recently, and, you know, we were all going through that phase of, well, looking for opportunities. And then Jill said, no, you make your opportunities. And that was a point well made. And I think that is a point well made for all of us Kipaipai artists, that, you know, we know now how to step out in the arena and do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And everyone here that's logged on tonight has work that has value. You're all making great work, all relevant work. There would be no reason why you couldn't surround that by others that are making similar things, or that are working in the kind of same genre that you're working. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that. Just your work alone should be a magnet to other good artists. So don't forget about that, that your work, the good work that you're making is also that conduit for connecting with other artists that are making good work.
Right, right. That's exactly right. It's a way to connect with other people. And my other thought, and I remember talking about this when we were at Kipaipai, was putting together a package. You want to go talk to a certain curator or a gallery, give them a package, give them a show that's already basically done.
Right.
You've already thought it out.
I'd say
Here's
to
an
add to
idea.
that, in addition to being, you know, giving them a beautiful package, is offering them engagement opportunities. So
Right.
in addition to this beautiful show, we also have this artist talk that we've organized, these 3 people. We also have a write-up by Betty Ann Brown that will be part
That's
of,
exactly right.
you know, so
Betty was part of our package.
right.
Thank
So as you add to, in addition to this beautifully crafted show, this exhibit, we have all of this engagement that we put together as well. There is, I'm going to tell you right now, there is no venue in California right now that would turn that down. You're doing the work for them, and it makes it, and it's, there's nobody that's going to turn that down. I wouldn't turn it
No, and even hotels
down.
and you know, places that are trying to draw people back in. Whenever I saw a new building going up here on our island of Oahu, I would go to them because I do public art. I would ask them if they would accept a proposal. It doesn't cost them anything.
Right.
And so tying that in with speakers, that again, you know, gives this event, this show, longer legs, and a book that also has a YouTube video. You know, we need to have a lot of cross-pollination and during this pandemic to be able to, you know, touch small groups of people, because that's where we're going to be for a while. And I just thought this show was amazing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, does anyone else have any questions? All right, well, if not, we're going to end it there, and we will see you all next Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel, whatever that is.
Do you have somebody who's presenting on next Friday yet?
Catherine?
We don't know who it's going to be. Marisa Bell said she wanted to, but I said you got to get your SHIT together. So we'll see.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
I do think that I will be posting a new link. We've been having issues with this particular link, so I'm gonna redo that. Annie and I were both on early just trying to test it out, and we were kind of concerned that other people might not be able to get on, but I'm gonna just put a new link together, and I'll post that in the Kipaipai in the group, in the private group. Another thing I did want to mention too, that soon Kimberly will be rolling out a new platform that is very similar to Facebook, but it'll only be for creatives without an algorithm, and you will all be automatically invited to participate. We have a couple more meetings before we go live with that, but I'm super, super, super excited about it. And I think there are a couple people here in Kipaipai that are already part of the platform. I think Dina and Randy, and I think Joy might even be on there too. Oh, and Sam, yeah, Samuel is also. And it is literally a Facebook style social media platform only for creatives. There's no advertising and there's no algorithm. So you can see everyone that's in your, that is on there, that's posting. You can post your own things. There will be resources. We are inviting other artist communities to participate. We're gonna just expand it and just grow the shit out of it. So that's coming soon. Stay tuned. In the next few weeks, we'll be inviting all of you to participate in that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
And so for anybody who has an idea of how they want to present their work, or, you know, they want to present it with a certain group, let me know.
Yes,
And I'll put you in
beautiful.
the schedule.
So I do have one question, because I was not able to see any of this chat until we turn the PowerPoint off. Is there a way for me to go back and read this? I'd love to share it with Ada as well.
When I turn this off, when we all end, recording will go into formatting, and it will format 3 files for me, and one of those files is the whole chat. And
Okay.
I can share that with you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I'd love to see it.
Sure. All right. Thank you guys. And
Thanks for
Bravo, Jill.
Thanks, Patty.
Excellent, Jill. All right, awesome. Thank you,
Bravo.
I have a question.
Andy. Have fun in Laguna. I'm jealous.
I'm
I had
jealous too.
beautiful studio visits today, and I have 3 more tomorrow, and it's been a beautiful day, and I'm enjoying right now. I'm sitting in my hotel room, watching the waves and looking out at the ocean, and it's pretty fabulous. Yeah.
Way to go.
Fantastic.
Where are you? Where are you, Andy?
Laguna Beach.
Oh, nice.
wow.
Oh, in the fall. Oh, wow.
My favorite place. Wow.
All right. Well,
All
good
right, you guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Andy.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Betty.
Good night. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.